agenda is the consent agenda. Can we push those onto the screen? Any that we have, Rick, please? Fantastic. Okay, those are the committee changes. Alex, this comes as an action item. Rick, do we have a poll?
Yes.
We could go ahead and post the poll, please.
Okay, you have 38 for and 3 abstentions.
Okay. All right. The consent agenda is passed. The next item on our agenda is a report from President Stokes. Thank you, President Stokes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you all on a Zoom screen. Again, I'm amazed by how many of my meetings are still on Zoom these days, but it is good. It really lets more people participate, and I very much appreciate that. So it's the end of January, but I'll still say Happy New Year because I haven't seen you all since the beginning of the year, and certainly since we last met. We of course had a great commencement in December. It seems like a long time ago, but we had 1,419 students who earned their degrees. We certainly had a wonderful hanging of the greens back in December. And, you know, that is one of the oldest student-related traditions on this campus. And so it brings a lot of people out from the community. Julie Coonrod was formally appointed as the interim dean for Anderson. So Mitzi Montoya is now in Utah, and Julie has is now taking the lead of Anderson School as the search begins for the Anderson School's next dean. We learned since I think we last met that we'll be bidding farewell to Arash Mafi as he moves on to become the Dean of Arts and Sciences, or the comparable position at the University of Kansas. And I think the provost and I both are really grateful that Janie Chermak, the chair of economics, will be serving as interim dean as that Arts and Sciences dean process is currently underway. I appreciate all of you who may have participated in what was the first of a 3-part campus climate survey. I think the faculty part closed, I think, at the end of December. The staff and student, we're currently doing the staff survey and had a really successful launch of that survey during the first week of January with a breakfast that was very well attended at La Posada. We've also are welcoming Dr. Yolanda Sanchez, who is formerly was at Dartmouth Cancer Center, but she is the new director and CEO of our UNM Comprehensive Cancer Center. Just a wonderful new leader, and I know that people will enjoy getting to know her. We also have, since we were last together, officially announced the addition of Juneteenth as one of UNM's observed holidays, and that will begin this year. I want to say thank you to all of you who weighed in. Lots of groups weighed in to advocate for adding the celebration to the university calendar. I start my traveling office hours tomorrow. And so I always love that opportunity to see people. I'm at the Rhodey Theater tomorrow, and so 10:30 to 11:30 on Wednesdays is a common traveling office hour time for me. But you know what looms the largest right now in my mind? Well, yesterday we had a very successful UNM Day at the Capitol. It was our first big UNM Day at the Capitol since early 2020. Because although they'd gone back to in person, they weren't having the big event. So it was, you know, for those of you, some of you may actually come to the Capitol for UNM Day. It is remarkable. There are tables set up where people can stop by and learn more about many of the programs that we have at UNM. So it's a day at the Capitol when people really are largely, by and large, celebrating what UNM is and does for the citizens of the state. So it really is a great time and great for us to get in there early, relatively early in the session, because we had an opening day, of course, earlier this month. And, you know, there are lots of things coming up. I'll be there for House Appropriations. It's higher education hearing. I think it's the end of this week. Senate Finance is early next week. There are many things that are going to lead us to be at the Capitol. And of course, it's a 60-day session. So I don't know how many of you have seen. Of course, I've got my thing on. You can't. Yeah. If I turned off the blur, you'd find out how messy my desk is. So I guess I'll just, you know, it's really a nice brochure that describes all of our legislative priorities. And we had some meetings yesterday describing a lot of these priorities to people who came up to the Capitol. Of course, as I think we've told you many times, increasing our ING funding and finding funding for compensation is, you know, at the top of our priority list. We have a lot of our research and public service projects. We have a lot of capital projects. We have, you know, projects that that we're talking to a lot of different legislators about. And so, and I know that there are some faculty who are actively involved with promoting, especially those RPSBs, but some of the other priorities of the institution. And I thank you for your advocacy for these legislative priorities. You know, right now it's a lot of discussion. You know, we have, you know, the suggestions from the executive, suggestions from the legislative finance committee, and so some differences in what is being recommended. So the negotiations really are occurring now and will be occurring over the next few weeks. You know, as you know, there's a tremendous amount of money, but a lot of questions about how best to strengthen the state going forward. You can find a huge amount of information about our priorities by going to the government relations website. And I think, I do think Fanny might have actually put that up in the chat, well, information about it. And you can go to the government relations website. What I'll tell you is that, you know, we put together a brochure, but that brochure does not capture everything that we're working on. We had an opportunity to put in for some specials. There's just a lot still to unfold over the next few weeks. And so you'll find that the government relations team is, you know, very active in Santa Fe, and as are a lot of leaders on campus. And so it takes up a lot of energy during this time of year, but it is a major part of our budget. And so I would, if these are things that are of interest to you, I would encourage you to go to that website, and you can sign up for the listserv. You can get regular updates about where things are. And if you have special things that you want to follow, you can get some information there. You know, also upcoming that some of you might not be quite aware of, you know, regents transition off of our board every couple of years. And so right now there's a process that's going on to determine replacement regents for Regent President Doug Brown had decided that he did not want to remain on the board. He's done his duty twice now as a member of the board. I don't yet know whether Sandra Begay, whose term ends, whether she'll get a reappointment. And then there's a transition at the student regent level. So we have the potential to have 3 of our 7 regents transitioned, with new regents coming in probably sometime in March. And so, you know, that's a lot that happens at the administrative level. But I wanted to just mention that, you know, that turnover would likely be taking place. And then, of course, here we are. This is the first Black History Month coming up, and we actually have already started celebrating it since the establishment of our new Department of Africana Studies. And so that's been a point of celebration and congratulations over the last few days. And I think a new era for us and for the Black experience at the University of New Mexico. And finally, the last thing I thought I'd mention is that the leadership is looking at examining the question of continuing the mandate for the COVID vaccination. We have, as you know, for the last 3 years, almost 3 years, especially starting in the summer of 2020, we began working with the Health Protocols Committee, which is populated with experts in, in health-related matters and public health, as well as infectious diseases, et cetera, and have asked them to review kind of the evidence for vaccination and mandates for vaccination going forward. And so we are going to be continuing that conversation and having, I believe we'll probably put together some kind of opportunity for a town hall where people can ask questions about where the science leads us now. And it's interesting to see the kinds of changes that are taking place with regard to vaccination. So I just wanted you to know that this conversation has begun, and we're actively seeking information that would really has the strong possibility of leading to a change in the mandate. What we have discovered is that, and I think this is good coming, this is the question I just saw, is this all vaccines or the COVID vaccines? This is the COVID vaccine mandate, which, and we will actually be talking about vaccinations in general. I've asked Health Protocols to think about, from a health perspective, what it is we do at the university to protect ourselves and to protect, our communities. So, but that's a longer term conversation. The shorter term conversation specifically has to do with what we might do related to COVID. And it's interesting, hearing from the Health Protocols group, the COVID vaccines do a tremendous job preventing serious disease, hospitalization, and death. What they don't do very well is prevent getting COVID or transmitting COVID to others. And so that's an important part of the equation. Another thing is that over time, we're discovering more information about any issues with reactions to vaccinations. And so there's some emerging, it's been gathered for some time. There's a lot more evidence now related to, its impact on young people. And we have a lot more treatments in our state and in our country for COVID. And so, and what we see transitioning is out of a pandemic and into something that is endemic. And so these are all things that we are gathering additional information about, but I wanted you to be aware that we are actively looking at this right now to decide whether or not to lift the mandate. And I think, I will say that right now we are very much looking at lifting the mandate, but it's uncertain when it might be, and we're still gathering information from the health authorities in the state and having conversations, beginning conversations with leadership with the faculty, leadership of the students, leadership of the staff. So as you might remember, it seems like a long time, but you know, what we do is we really examine all these things. We have conversations, we answer questions about things, and then decide, you know, what, when, and how to move forward. So I wanted to let you know that those conversations have started. And with that, I hope that so the question about health sciences, there will always be a separateness of requirements within the clinical operations. And so, so that what is mandated within the clinical operations, you know, we're not really talking about that. That's a separate issue. But there are areas that are in health sciences that are not clinically based. And so those are all part of the things that will, you know, we will be clarifying. So I'm seeing these things pop up. But with that, you know, I just want to say, you know, I hope the semester has started off well for everyone. And, you know, I don't know, Finney, if you'd like to go ahead with the provost report and then have us both answer questions, or how you'd like to do this today.
Yes, we can do it that way. Unless someone has a pressing question right this moment. Seeing none, we'll go to the president's report, or the provost report, the next item on our agenda.
Okay, thank you, Finney. Rick, I'm going to share screen.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so hopefully folks can see these slides. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on each of these. Some of these are borrowed from the December report to the Regents STAR subcommittee. So I wanted you to just have a few of those that Rick can put in the minutes of this meeting as well. And so, you know, I wanted to hit a few of the leadership transitions. President Stokes hit a few of these, but some of these are ones that I haven't mentioned in this group. And so I just, so everybody's kind of on the same page, knows just things that are going on. So one, of course, is that Carolyn Montoya is now acting as interim dean of nursing with the departure of Chris Casper at the end of the calendar year. And so we're thrilled to have Carolyn with us. President Stokes mentioned Julie Coonrod as interim dean of the Anderson School. I'm happy to have her leadership there. And the search committee for that is forming. Chuck Flederman has taken on the role of the interim dean of engineering for just a couple of months here because the new dean of engineering, Donna Riley, won't be starting until April 1st. And so for the month of January, February, March, Chuck is taking on the interim role in engineering, and always grateful for his excellent citizenship. And very excited to see Donna joining us very soon. Also, Chris Goodrich has been appointed as the interim dean of education and human sciences. And so really excited to be working with him in that new role. And then Jesse Alaman is the interim dean of graduate studies. Jesse's been associate dean there. He's been acting dean there. And effective January 1st took on the interim dean of graduate studies role. So those are just a few of the leadership transitions here in Albuquerque. And then I want to mention that Sabrina Hazel has taken on the role of chancellor at UNM Gallup. You may know that she was interim chancellor from July through into December, and after a search process, really thrilled to appoint her as the chancellor. The search for the Arts and Sciences Dean is underway, chaired by Eric Lau, and there have been several listening sessions already for that search. And as I mentioned, the Dean of Anderson is our next search, and we're forming a committee for that literally this week. So stay tuned on that. And that'll be chaired by Dean Harris Smith. Just a few other things I want to mention. Some of you know that we've got some large faculty hiring initiatives going on. The first was really hiring 13 faculty for the new School of Public Health. That's really been well underway for quite some time now. Another is a significant expansion of faculty in education and human sciences, really in part driven by opportunities from the state with new state endowments to support teacher education, the teacher residency programs, and so on. Another group of new lines that are funded out of the provost office. And then 7 lines that are really replacements funded by COEHS. But main point is that really another big faculty hiring initiative. And it's hard to hire a lot of faculty all at once. So we have a lot of effort and good thinking going on in education and human sciences to make this happen over the next year or so. We're also engaged in a set of hires in multiple schools and colleges around STEM. This is driven first by really state needs that have really identified a set of economic development sectors that are STEM focused and for which there's a need to see growth in those areas. We've been fortunate to get funding from the NIH to support some of this growth. We actually had a little bit of funding from National Science Foundation even in the last couple of years to support this growth. The new Dean of Engineering sought a commitment to grow engineering by about 20 positions over 5 years, and some other initiatives going on as well. And President Stokes mentioned some of our special requests to the state. We've asked the state for $20 million to help support this initiative as well. They're currently at 5 million in terms of what they're recommending, but there's some other related bills that add to that total. And so we're hoping to see significant state support coming out of the legislative session. I wanted to bring to your attention, hopefully most of you know about this, the latest advanced COVID impact report, which came out in late November. The URL for that is down at the bottom of this slide, but you can also find it on the advanced website. So that's worth having a look at. I mean, the bottom line, I think, is no surprise to any of us, and that's that there are lingering barriers to scholarship for faculty as we come out of this period of pandemic and into this period of endemicity. The sources of those, I think, are not surprises either. That report made some specific recommendations about things that we ought to do and continue. Some of those are listed here. The We Are One programs out of the VP for Research's office, the professional travel support that we've been doing, continuing to work with chairs on evaluation processes and the impacts of COVID, continuing some of the tenure supports. We've also been meeting with chairs to provide more information for chairs about the resources available to support students. One of the challenges of any large university is we actually have a number of resources to help and support students, but students don't always know about them, and neither do faculty. And faculty then sometimes feel obliged to kind of figure all that out on their own. And so we're trying to increase the awareness of what actually is available. And so VP for Student Affairs, Eric Scott, and Executive Director of SHAC, Stephanie McGyver, met with chairs in the fall to do some of that work. And Eric is pulling together a larger student wellness initiative, a significant piece of which is really focused on helping the whole community, students, faculty, staff, know what's available and how to best take advantage of the existing supports so that that work doesn't need to necessarily fall on faculty. I want to say just a little bit about budgeting because we're in that period of time. And so, budgeting involves a lot of different pieces. There's a state budgeting process that plays into what our budget next year looks like. There's questions about tuition and tuition rates. There's developing or understanding enrollment expectations. We have internal allocation processes such as the budget leadership team process. In academic affairs, the internal process really starts last August. We asked the deans and others to do multi-year plans, and those plans include resource requests for new resources, and those get reviewed and prioritized. We identified potential funding streams, which might include core funds, which I'll talk about in a minute. We might identify activities that we can fund on one-time funds, or that unit can use reserves on, or that we can use various sources of funds focused on capital, buildings and durable equipment and so on. So we're both prioritizing budget requests, but also figuring out where actually is it best to pull funds from to support a particular need. To say just a little bit about the BLT process from an academic affairs perspective, academic affairs covers 11 schools and colleges, a number of other academic units, and a set of enabling units like enrollment management, advising, and so on. And within that group of units, we received about 260 requests for new funding, totaling recurring requests of about 20 million, some one-time requests of about 2 million, capital requests of about 31 million. I do want to emphasize this is never the totality of needs or requests. This is just what came in through the multi-year planning process. And so we take all of those requests and you know, we can't expect to receive 20 million in recurring funds within the budget process for the next year. It's unrealistic. So we have to sort of categorize those into things we absolutely must do as they're contractually required, critical strategic investments and high needs. And when we went through that process and presented this to BLT, we wound up with about 12 million in new recurring funding requests on the core fund. And core funds are really state ING funds and tuition dollars associated with the central campus units. And so we've submitted $12 million in requests that cover things like faculty promotions, new tenure track faculty lines, student affairs needs, management of the deficit in arts and sciences. We propose to try and finish out that deficit management this next fiscal year, so it'll be basically done when a new dean comes in. We have some instructional needs that are critical because the first year class grew. There are critical needs in both arts and sciences and university college to teach that large income first year class, et cetera. And so that's the kind of set of things that wound up in this 12 million request. What'll happen? Well, we'll see. It depends on what the state does, what we can do with tuition, what we expect for enrollment, what the regions ultimately approve as a budget. But it starts to give you a sense of where we're thinking in terms of the academic affairs units in one of the drivers I mentioned is, of course, enrollment. And so here's where we are for spring. It's really a pretty good story. Enrollment is up overall about 3.4% in the Albuquerque-based programs. That includes HSC. The branches are up about 7% overall. 3 of the branches are up in headcount, 1 is down. One area of interest for us is that we're down in graduate enrollments. And we're kind of seeing that across the board. We're down in graduate enrollments. We're also down in graduate applications for next year. And so we're really trying to encourage units to look critically at what graduate enrollment they can support and to look at their applications as early as they can. You're more likely to get students to come if they're admitted earlier. And we have been seeing a decrease last year, and at the moment, at least, seeing a decrease this year. It's early, but the trend is there to see a decrease in graduate enrollments. A couple other things to observe: huge growth in teaching in College of Fine Arts, and also in architecture and planning. College of Fine Arts is driven very largely by film and digital media. That's really just exploding. We can expect a higher faculty there. The student faculty ratios are really beyond acceptable. But it's just clearly a growth area that's drawing a lot of student interest. Seeing decreases in enrollment right now in the health science schools. And so that's of some interest and concern that folks need to try and understand. We've also seen a decrease in student credit hours in engineering, and that's a trend we need to turn around. So that's where we are for the spring and any of that. Thinking kind of bigger, we've had 2 years ago, in 2020, we had a 7% growth in new students coming in as freshmen. 2021, we had a 10%. Last fall, we had a 14% growth. We're seeing growth in new students coming in. We're seeing growth in overall enrollment. This is just the history of new first-time full-time freshmen entering the university. We're sitting here right now in fall 2022. We had 3,509 students, new students. That's almost the biggest it's been since 2013, when we had one more student coming in. So we've really kind of gone through this trough, and we're seeing notable increases in enrollment and getting back to where we were even back in 2012, 2013. And so that's a good thing. That's a good trend. Our mission is to educate, and these are the folks that we can educate. The challenge that we really need to start thinking about is our ability to help these students be successful. And so I did want to just share a little bit of data on student retention and graduation. And so this graph shows the fraction of first-year students reaching graduation after various numbers of terms. Let me just sort of circle this little 2019 dot. That's students who entered in 2019 and graduated after 6 terms. Yay, pretty good. It's about 6% of students, but we actually, we have these new freshmen who managed to finish in 3 terms and then entering in 2019. This is all organized by term. And so here is 8 terms. Students who entered in 2018, about 38% of them graduated after 8 terms. Students, and we can pick any one of these lines off and see how many students graduated after 8 terms. And it's about 35%. All of these are kind of clustered around that 35%. If we go out to a 6-year graduation rate, which is this group here, that's about 50% of our students who graduate after 12 terms. And that means 50% didn't. And of those, many never will. And so we look at retention, and this is now term 3, term 5, term 7. So these are fall terms, basically, for freshmen entering in a fall term. 29% of the students who started in 2021 are gone. 42% of the students who started in 2020 are gone. 44% of the students who started in 2019 are no longer with us. 38% of those students are effectively gone. 6% of them graduated, but the other 38% are no longer with us at UNM. That doesn't mean they won't graduate college. They'll probably graduate. Many of them will graduate from a different university, but they won't graduate from here. And so, we often talk about our retention rate in the positive way. We have 65% retention or 70% retention to the third term. But it's worth flipping that around and thinking what that really means. 30 to 40% of our students are gone after a few terms. And so there really is work for us to continue to do, to think about student success, student retention, and moving them to graduation. And so one of the things that we're really just starting to do is an initiative we're tentatively calling 60 by 30. I was just told recently that there's a college in Texas that uses that name, so we might have to reconsider. But the idea is to really start to organize additional efforts to help us improve undergraduate student success all the way to graduation, with a metric of having a 60% 5-year graduation rate by 2030. So said another way, like to see 60% of the students who enter in 2025 who have graduated by 2030. And that's sort of a tentative goal at this point, but the real key point is that we need to work to identify what are the systemic barriers and try and address them and improve graduation outcomes. And this is I think this is a team effort. We all have roles in helping students reach success. So again, we're kind of stay tuned on this. This is really an initiative that we're just starting to think through and pull together. We've done a lot of work to get new students in. We need to ramp up our work to support those students and help them be successful right into it. And I'm pretty sure I will stop there, and I'm sure the president and I are happy to take any questions.
Great. Questions, colleagues? Okay. I have one or two.
I knew it. I
Any
knew it.
business points?
I knew it.
And he probably has them written down too.
I do. I just can't. Oh, there they are. Okay. So these are not difficult questions though. Is it possible for us to get a copy of that PDF of that glossy in a PDF form that we can distribute to the faculty that has our priorities? I didn't see it online. Is that possible?
It actually should be at the government relations website in a PDF form to be printed out.
I'll try and find it while we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We told
then-
everybody in a meeting yesterday that they could get it there. So I sure hope it is.
Okay. Maybe I just missed it.
I'm pasting it in the chat.
Okay, great. Thank you. The second question was about the kind of time frame on the decision about the vaccinations.
Mhm.
I know we're leaning towards lifting that mandate, but when do you have some timeline for the decision on that?
Quite honestly, I had originally hoped to get this all worked out, and maybe we still will, to have it worked out over the next within the next month or so. But I've got to do a little more homework with what is being expected at the state level to be sure that we're not, whatever we might do is in line. So I'm not certain what the timeline is going to be. As of today, I can't say for sure.
Okay. And then finally, on the 10% increase, I imagine if we had that guaranteed, it was in the bill and it was already passed, is that 10%? Do you imagine that 10% will come as across the board, or do you imagine fragmenting that in some way?
We don't actually know how it's going to be sent to us at this point. And there are some differences in what the executive has recommended, what the legislative body has recommended at this point. There's an interesting part of what the legislature has offered is an amount of money to be distributed to higher education institutions for faculty, but it's not clear what guidance we're going to be given. And so I think those are all things to be figured out.
Okay.
James, do you have another take on that?
Yeah, well, I'll add a little bit of detail and color. So, we've made the request for 10%. I think it's justified. But of course, the governor and legislature have to work that through. The executive recommended hang on, I'm reading it here. Well, let me do the LFC first. The legislative recommended a 5% compensation increase funded at 80%. So meaning they would legislate a 5% increase, but only 80% of the funding for it would be provided to universities. And then in addition, the legislative recommendation includes $6 million to be distributed statewide for faculty compensations, excluding HSC, and $1 million for addition for faculty compensation for HSC. The exact algorithm by which HED would distribute that is not specified. So if they did that $6 million for all faculty in the state, what proportion of it UNM would get is not specified in the language. We might expect to get $2.5 million, something like that, if they do it in their kind of normal ways. But again, only partially. Well, I'm sorry, the 5% there is partially funded. The executive recommended 4%. And so now it's the political process of us encouraging something beyond that, and the legislature and executive working it through. We do have some fairly good data around faculty compensation where the needs are greatest. And so in the budget requests that I described to you for core funds, we're not imagining, there's built into that some funds for faculty equity that we do not imagine distributing uniformly, but rather putting in the places where the discrepancies are greatest. And so, how the legislation works out is one question. And then internally, how we choose to distribute may or may not be constrained by the legislation. But again, we do have good data showing where there are the biggest needs in terms of faculty compensation relative to peers.
So, and Barbara, I see your hand. So is it fair to say that there is a gap between what the LFC and others are recommending and what we're requesting, likely to come someplace in the middle? Is that fair?
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Barbara?
Yes, if I could just add a little bit of background to that. So yes, of course, what we request, what the executive recommends, what the legislative branch recommends are usually three different things. And we hope that the recommendation closest to ours get funded. But just for some very brief background, for many years, the legislature really did not fully understand that at our one university, for example, our faculty are funded by various pots, some by ING, some of us are entirely funded by our federal grants, and some are a cross section of that. So we have three buckets where many of our other institutions, our community colleges and our regional comprehensive universities, their faculty are almost all funded by ING funds. So it wasn't until the last few years that the legislature became aware of this. And so hence when they were saying they're going to give, say, a 6% raise to faculty, they were only calculating that on the ING money that came to our higher education institutions. So in our case, that left out a lot of faculty. Like I say, those who are on grants and other types of funding. Where at a community college, that may have covered all their faculty. So that's what that 80% and 85% is based on. There was a attempt to come up with a formula to determine what percentage of the faculty will be funded by the state based on what percentage of faculty are funded through ING, but that we could then have that go farther out for all of our faculty, no matter how they're funded. So I just thought it was helpful for this group to know that information, that it's complicated with an R1 university in good ways, but we don't want to be punished for the good work that we're doing. We want to grow our extramural funding. We don't want to be funded for it. We penalized for it. We want to have more funding for that. Thank you, Finney.
And
Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. There's an additional element of that that's interesting as well. So the Legislative Finance Committee recommends, for example, in this recommendation, that 80% of the compensation be funded by the state. leaving 20% unspecified. HED gets the money and they distribute it according to their own internal formula. And so we may get 80% of what's needed for a 5% increase. We might get more, we might get less. Because the legislature does one thing and then HED distributes by a different formula. And that did happen last year.
Yeah, I remember clearly the discussions about how the different hands didn't always agree with what they were going to do, and we were making efforts to educate them so that they would better understand the complexity of a research one. That was in 2005.
Well,
So-
I should say, I mean, 80% is the most that's ever been proposed. Right? That they're proposing 80% is evidence that they have been listening
Yes,
to these issues and concerns.
yes.
it just, as educators, it just strikes me as odd that our legislature has not learned that yet. Don't mean to cast aspersions on the legislature, but maybe there are other factors that at work that keep us from crossing that threshold. I don't know. Colleagues, any other questions for the provost and the President Stokes? Before they go, I'd like to publicly thank both the provost and the president for actually two things that I'll talk very briefly about in my president's report, and that is providing funding for Black History Month events. It can be expensive, these events, but also agreeing to think through how we would fund these events going forward. And for me, really important, this notion of the ceremonial life of the university and thinking critically about what we're going to do going forward as an institution. What is it that we want to be able to see and do as an institution, especially for some of us who are from schools back east. Traditions are a really important part of that three-legged stool that we want to provide our students with in terms of preparation. So thank you, and thank you for putting up with my grousing about it. So
Thank you, Vinny.
all right.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Bye.
Take care, everybody.
Colleagues, the next thing on my agenda is the president's, or our agenda is the president's report. I have a few things to talk about, the things that I hope that we could, talk amongst ourselves in groups to see what directions we would like to go. And not all of us are going to be aware of the policy numbers and such. I want to talk specifically about C70, which has to do with personnel files and what information can and cannot be put in a file. And then CO7 that has to do with faculty discipline. And I think we are in the next, few months, the next year, some of these issues are going to come to a head. And I hope that when they do, we've had a chance to think through them and have some sense of where we want to go as a faculty senate. I'm sorry, I have a very bad sinus infection. I'm so sorry. Part of the conversation has been in CO7. We have, oh, I'm so sorry. Provisions for to hear cases of faculty misconduct by a standing committee. But when we have things like if someone wants to file a CO9 report for bullying or something else that violates, campus respect policy, I don't think that process is robust enough. I know we're not supposed to use the word robust anymore. I don't think that it does the kind of work that it needs to do, so that you don't need the provisions that you would have in a C70 that suggest, hey, a faculty member should be able to remove erroneous information from their file or not. I think the problem is less with the policy C70 than it is with having a good FMRC faculty misconduct policy that gives all of our faculty, due process. More than that, I'm very uncomfortable with the notion that when we have a CO9 complaint, that winds up going to university lawyers or to the ombudsperson. It seems to me that part of faculty governance should also mean that we have a stronger role in faculty discipline and self-policing. That we as a faculty will police ourselves. We don't need university council or some outside arbitrator to decide what's just and fair on our campus. I don't think that runs counter to anything that the union is putting forward. I'm really hopeful that as we keep going forward, that our policies, that we take steps to bring our policies more in alignment, not that union would dictate what policy is, but that we don't come to agreements about policy with the administration without consulting more carefully. And so that's going to take some work. We've got Chris, who's going to be keen on what the policies are coming in as faculty senate president. That will be useful as we go forward. And we'll be having additional conversations. At least I will be having additional conversations with COG, AF&T, and with union leadership. And if you want to hit me offline to chat about this, or if you have something to say now, that's fine too. But I want us to be thinking about how we can have a more nimble and effective faculty governance processes, I guess I should say. Any thoughts or comments on what I've just mentioned? I did also mention that we have the committee to discuss traditions. I hope that we'll have representation from the faculty senate on that, and committees for funding these different like ethnic studies or ethnic group celebrations like Black History Month. Hopefully we'll get some faculty senate representation on that. We've also had some discussion. Olivia, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand there.
It's okay. I just wanted to respond to your point about faculty governance and the CO9 process. I do think it would be very, very helpful to have a layer of some type of faculty arbitration, because when you file a CO9 complaint, it goes straight to either you need to go to the ombudsman, which is a good option, but an informal option, or the formal route, it goes straight to a lawyer. And that's pretty startling. It seems like we go from 0 to 100, and it might be helpful to have a layer of what you're talking about of more faculty oriented intervention.
And it also makes it intimidating for the person more intimidating for the individual who might want to put forward a claim. And, I think that is, we have to be very careful about making sure that people don't feel like they don't want to point out these issues simply because it's too onerous to do it. Now, there is work. It's a lot of, we talked with Sever Bordenau this afternoon, and yeah, I mean, it's one of the barriers is that it is a lot of work on the part of the complainant. But we should, I think through this process and have another look at CO7 to see how we might, address this issue. Thank you for that that input, Olivia. That's an important thought. Anyone else have anything to say about that? Chris.
I just wanted to agree with Olivia, and not only are those two options not satisfactory, usually the conclusion of any investigation that the administration does in relation to CO9 is not satisfactory or helpful. As someone who has attempted to file a complaint using CO9 myself.
Okay. Well, let's continue the conversations about that. And again, feel free to reach out to me offline or to Chris offline to talk about these issues. We have had some discussions about changing the term of the faculty senate president. You know, I think that if we do something like that, it should be for a future date, that we would go through an election cycle or two before we would actually arrive at such a change. But it's just, that's something that we've been trying to think through. A 2-year term, how would that look? Maybe 2-year terms also for members of operations committee that are staggered, so that you have some consistency over time. That way, the incoming faculty senate president, if things work out just so, can wind up being there with just the past president and everyone else new. And if you have an inactive past president, like I plan to be, if you have an inactive past president, Kristen,
Don't think I didn't
Right.
hear that, Finney, under your breath.
but you could have a faculty senate president that has no one on ops. That's everyone on ops is new. They're new. It's not really a sustainable way to manage. So much of what happens in faculty governance is institutional memory passed from one faculty senate president, one operations committee, one senate to the next. So it makes some sense for us to think through this. I don't think that it is an urgent thing it has to happen immediately, but something that we all need to be thinking about, whether it's something that we'd like to do. With that said, I'll stand for any questions. Here, no questions, colleagues. The next item on our agenda is an action item. It's a new graduate certificate in maternal child health. And I believe Professor Tammy Thomas, our assistant professor Tammy Thomas, and student success manager Pam Cedillo from College of Population Health are with us. Could you raise your hands if you're okay? Well, on your little thing, because it pops you at the top of the screen. There you go. Thank you, Pamela. Okay.
I know Dr. Thomas is here somewhere.
Okay,
There she
we
is.
go. All right. So please tell us about this graduate certificate.
Sure, I'm gonna, excuse me, I'm gonna share my screen. I just have a few slides. And let me, 1 second here. So, we're really happy to be here and talk with you about the maternal and child health minor and certificate for graduate students from the College of Population Health. I just wanted to share a little rationale for why we started this endeavor. As many of you already know, New Mexico regularly ranks 49th or 50th in terms of child well-being. And we face a number of maternal and child health challenges in our state. And we don't currently have any public health maternal and child health program. And of course, many states do. So we are proposing a certificate in minor for both of these programs. It would be 12 credits, and that would consist of 4 3-credit courses. We've listed the courses here for you. It's Introduction to Maternal and Child Health and 3 seminars. And these students will also be, all of these courses have been approved by the IPE Honors Program at the Health Sciences Center. And so students who participate in this certificate or minor are also eligible to receive a certificate in IPE Honors. So to tell you a little bit about the difference between the certificate and the minor. So all graduate students or professional students will be eligible to receive a minor in maternal and child health, while non-university individuals who hold a bachelor's degree would be able to apply for the maternal and child health certificate. And we do have already some interest in community members and various organizations to participate in the certificate if it is approved and available. So our aim is really to recruit students from multiple disciplines to create a well-trained maternal and child health workforce. And we believe that the minor and certificate will increase the MCH workforce. Those who are already working in the workforce and don't have maternal and child health training, which is often true in many of the maternal and child health jobs in the state. And we feel like this is especially important in our high-risk communities where maternal and child health issues impact morbidity, mortality, and quality of life for women, children, and families. We just wanted to also share our budget projections. So currently we have maternal faculty and staff at the college who are teaching these courses. They have been available to students, so we do not need any additional staff or faculty, and we don't require any extra funding to run this program. We do anticipate having 10 to 15 students rolling in the minor and certificate in the first year. We expect the enrollment to increase as a result of our outreach efforts and our community partnerships with community-based and governmental organizations. Thus, we hope to increase revenue. And again, the maternal and child health program courses have been approved by the IP Honors Program, who also advertise our courses. So we do get students currently from various disciplines at the HSC, as well as students from main campus. And I just wanted to share with you, we have been offering these courses. And so we taught the Introduction to Maternal and Child Health in the fall of 2021. We had 22 students. We offered the same course in the summer. We had 23 students. We pilot tested our MCH Seminar 2 with 7 students. And I am currently teaching the MCH Seminar 1, and I have 28 students in that course. And that is all I have to share with you, and I'm happy to entertain questions.
Any questions, colleagues? But then again, this comes to us as an action item. Rick, can we post the poll, please?
It passes with 43, 4, and 4 abstentions.
Okay, that's overwhelming support. Thank you very much, and congratulations on the certificate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This is much needed for our students. We have a lot of support for it from the students. This is great. Thank you.
Sounds like it. Good. Thank you. Congratulations.
I think we'll have better outcomes for mothers and babies too. I'm very excited.
Yeah. Thank you, Ezra. Colleagues, the next item on our agenda is a new graduate certificate in secondary education with 7 through 12 licensure. And the good Dr. Marjorie Krebs is here to walk us through that. Oh.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. I am in my car, but I am not driving, so I don't want anyone to be concerned about that. I appreciate your time and considering our graduate certificate in secondary education with 712 licensure. So I'll go through the basics for you. The purpose of this certificate is to change from our current MA in secondary education plus licensure to just separate the licensure portion of that degree, and then students would reapply for the MA in education. We want to increase the number of qualified, competent teachers of secondary students in New Mexico. Secondary teachers are licensed to teach in grades 7 through 12 with specific content areas: English language arts, science, mathematics, and social studies. We want to make sure that our teachers have those professional understandings, practices, and identities to bring their highest quality work to secondary students. We also want to make sure that we're meeting accountability accountability measures for the university and for the state legislature. Right now, in our MA with licensure program, our students are counted as graduate students, and if they only take the licensure courses, they are not showing up as completers if they don't return to finish the entire MA, or many of them come to us with a master's degree already and don't want to seek a second master's degree. So we'd be able to identify those people completing the certificate as completers for our university data. It also allows, for example, a student studying for their master's degree in history to add the certificate to their master's program so that they could earn a teaching license while in their graduate degree, which really brings qualified content area people to our students in K-12 education. Our potential students, you can see on the left, are career changers with bachelor's degrees, current graduate students, as I mentioned, educational assistants already working in education who have a bachelor's degree, those already holding masters, as I mentioned, who want to become teachers, and retirees. For example, I speak to several people a month from Sandia Labs who are retiring at an early age and aren't ready to really enter the retirement world. And so they have that science and mathematics expertise that our schools so desperately need. You can see on the right, the SOAR report. That's the Southwest Organization for Academics report. I believe, I may not be exactly right on that acronym, but it reports on teacher vacancies each year. In 2021, there were 1,048 teacher vacancies. Almost a third of those were at the secondary level. And if you multiply that out times each secondary teacher teaching about 100 students, it's over 3,000 students who don't have a qualified secondary teacher. We believe that this certificate will attract greater numbers of people who want to become teachers. They can finish this certificate and their licensure requirements in one calendar year. In terms of budgetary impact, we currently see no increase in the budget because we do teach all of these classes currently. However, as always, if our enrollment increases, which we're hoping, then we will need additional content area methods instructors, seminar instructors, and field supervisors. So that is the end of my presentation.
Colleagues, I ask for unanimous consent to take over facilitating the agenda for Faculty Senate President Finney Coleman, who is clearly faking it, so that we can continue with our agenda. Any objections? Seeing none, thank you so much. Professor Krebs, Dr. Krebs, thank you so much for your presentation. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Krebs? As a TESOL instructor, I have a long wait time, so. Rick, you might have to walk me through this, but Rick, can we move forward with a poll for
Yes.
this
Yes.
item? So if you all wouldn't mind entering your votes.
Okay, it passes 42 approve and 3 abstain.
Rick, it's 39, 42.
Oh, I'm sorry, 39. 39 approved and 3 abstain.
So it sounds like we have overwhelming support
Yes.
for this proposal. Congratulations to Dr. Krebs.
Thank you. And I'm excited to share this with the secondary ed faculty. We're looking forward to moving forward. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. I'm not going to use the right words that Finney would know how to use, but let's see here. Moving on to our next agenda item. It looks like we have the Chair of Physics and Astronomy, Dr. Richard Rand, presenting on a general education course, Physics 1150. Dr. Rand?
Can you hear me?
Barely. Can hear you. It sounds like you're in Santa Fe, far, far away. No.
I wish I was in Santa Fe.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
Okay, turned it up a bit. I don't have any slides. I'll just explain what this is all about. So we have a general physics class for non-majors in the UNM core and the statewide Common Core, which is called Physics 1115 Survey of Physics, which is a sleep-inducing name. And the enrollment in that class over the last several years has decreased rapidly, faster than can be explained by the decreasing enrollment or the reduction in the number of credit hours in the UNM core. And we wanted to do something to make this class more attractive because we think it's a very important class for students to take. At the same time, a lot of our instructors, including Senator Matthews from the great state of physics and astronomy, started teaching the class a little bit differently, where their focus was not on doing a complete survey of physics from one end to the other, trying to be relatively complete, but starting from the viewpoint of, what is the physics that students who are not going to be science majors or scientists or engineers, what is the physics that they really need to know that's relevant for their daily lives? For issues like global warming, energy production, and how things work, how you run sports, things like that. So a lot of instructors started to teach it that way. And to make that class more attractive, we wanted to change the title and description away from Survey of Physics to a new title, which we wanted to call Physics You Need for Life. And the title and the description we're going to change, and the student learning outcomes we're also going to change. And that requires, therefore, making it a unique course in the statewide Common Core. So in consulting with Pamela Cheek about this, we understood the way to do it was to actually create a new course number, let the old course sunset, and make it a unique course in the statewide Common Core. So that's what we're proposing to do with this new class 1150. And so, we've gone through all the justification for why we think it should be in the UNM core and in the statewide core, what the new student learning outcomes will be, and so on. And so that is our proposal. I will say that we do intend to still accept the other Physics 1115s from around the state as equivalent to our Physics 1115. we just want students to take a physics class, basically. If they come from somebody else, if they've taken a physics class for non-majors, that's what we're happy with, even if they haven't taken ours. So that is basically our proposal. So I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rand. I have 2 questions, but let me open it up to my colleagues first. Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Rand? Richard, are you saying 1150 as in 50 or 1115 as in 15?
50, so we have to give it a new course number.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure we have it correct on the agenda.
Okay, sorry.
And no, it's okay. My other question is, it sounds like you're saying we should all be proud of the work that our faculty senate colleague, John Matthews, has been doing in your department.
Oh, absolutely.
And his positive influence since we stole him from Johns Hopkins.
John is a very popular lecturer for our non-science majors and has very good ideas about how to teach those classes.
It's so great. Any opportunity I get to celebrate each other, I'm happy to do it. So thanks so much. Any other questions before we vote? Rick, do you have a poll to bring up for us?
Yes. Okay, it is approved with 38 approvals and 4 abstentions.
Excellent. I wish all faculty meetings were this easy. Congratulations, Dr. Rand. And thank you to you and your colleagues for the great work you're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Chris.
Next, we move to agenda item 10, general education course, architecture 2125 from our colleague, Dr. Aaron Kayer. Aaron, I turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you all. The Department of Architecture is proposing to add an existing course, ARC 2125, which is World Architecture History 2, as a general education option for the humanities. The class offers really a survey of architecture history from the 1700s to the present. And it importantly, I think, considers both Western and non-Western traditions. So it would geographically expand the offerings of the current humanities courses. It is similar in structure to other humanities gen eds, such as US History 1 and US History 2, as well as World Civ 1 and 2. The Department of Architecture is also considering making World Architecture 1 in a gen ed as well, but we're going to wait and see hopefully how the enrollment works out with this first course. Both of the World Architecture 1 and 2 courses are independent and have no prereqs. We don't anticipate any budgetary impacts. This course is always offered as a requirement for our undergrads in architecture. The Dean of the School of Architecture and Planning has committed, though, to supporting the class with additional support for graduate assistants should the enrollment increase. Our current enrollment is around 80 for this class, and year 1 we plan for 120, year 2 140, and year 3 160. I think that's about it.
Colleagues, any questions for Dr. Kayer?
Hi, Chris, John Matthews. I just have this standard question in general education. When a student comes from some other institution, what's the mapping between your course and say what they might have got credit for at New Mexico State or who knows where?
That's a great question. We usually evaluate them on a case-by-case basis. So I often don't deal with that as the professor of this particular class. It's usually dealt with at the chair level. But we do offer this already across campus. So our history students are taking this. Many other departments, students from other departments are taking this. And we do offer, often CNM has the exact course, and so we offer placement for those students as well to waive out. So it is already a common core with the state, so there is that reciprocity as well that already exists.
Other questions? Seeing none, Rick, could you please pull up the next poll?
Okay, it passes with 39 approvals and 4 abstentions.
Thank you, everyone.
Excellent. Congratulations, Aaron. Agenda item number 11, a government relations update from Barbara Dameron. Barbara?
Hi, Chris. Thank you so much to you and to Finney, and hello, colleagues. I thought during the legislative session, it would be helpful for you to hear what your government relations committee is doing. And we've had great committee, several great members. Cassiano, I see is on here. We meet regularly and have a lot that we're getting done during this session. We thank each of you, your units who apply for the capital outlay funding requests that will go through with that. We've met and reviewed all that, and we are going to be, the one that was selected is a $200,000 request to update the stage lighting in the recital concert hall, Keller Hall, from the Department of Music. So we are doing a training. I'll be doing a training for all of our government relations committee folks. If anyone else is interested, going to the Capitol to advocate for our capital outlay, please do contact me. But I'll be doing a training for those of us who are going up there to the Capitol. We'll be deciding on a day when we're going to be up there advocating for this, our faculty senate capital outlay priority project with that. So we're establishing that faculty day with government relations. We work closely with government relations with all three who are there, with in addition to supporting all of UNM's priorities, as was talked about earlier, of course, the 10% compensation increase and anything else that's in that 4-page, that 2-page, both sides brochure that GovRel is putting out with that. We're actively involved with that as well. So I just want you to know that your government relations committee is working regularly. Many of us were up there yesterday for UNM Lobby Day. And I do want to say those lobby days are very productive, not only for seeing legislators and such, but it's also time for UNM units to collaborate. And you're close together on a lot of these tables. And I know of 2 instances where some new research ideas evolved out of some of the closeness of some of the tables that were together and some ideas going forward with that. But the UNM was recognized on the floor of the Senate and the floor of the House yesterday. We got to meet with a number of the leadership, and we got to also meet with legislative staff on some important parts, because as you'll see in the GovRel aspect, our priorities, in addition, of course, the 10% compensation is our own ING funds, as well as we have a hefty group of RPSP requests this year. So I don't want to take up any more time, Chris, but I just wanted to give that update and see if there are any questions or comments from the group. Thank you for allowing me to do this, Chris.
Thank you, Barbara. Colleagues, any questions?
Thank you.
Seeing none. Thank you, Barbara. Our next agenda item, number 12, Basic Needs Statewide Study Survey. Dr. Sarita Kargas.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for giving me a minute of your time. I'm an associate professor of human rights in the Honors College, and I'm leading the Basic Needs Grand Challenge along with several other women who might be here today, Diana Gonzalez Pacheco and Tammy Thomas from Population Health, Also on our leadership is April Land, a lawyer from the law school. And it is part of the grand challenge, but it came about simultaneously that we were invited to do a statewide study on food and housing insecurity in higher ed in New Mexico. And in fact, we are the first statewide study ever to include faculty and staff, full and part-time. The initiative is a result of our UNM 2 years of data collection. Our report caught the attention of HED, and the Deputy Secretary of Higher Ed said, would we do a statewide study, which was always our ambition anyway. We got the funding from the governor's food initiative. She put $1 million towards college hunger, and HED weaseled out, I shouldn't use that word, got a small portion of that to put towards the research study. So it's launching on February 15th, and I am appealing to you for your participation. If you'd be willing to give 15 minutes of your class time, that would certainly enhance participation and encourage your adjuncts, full and part-time staff to take the survey. It is translated into Spanish. We will be sending out tonight or tomorrow. We'll be papering the campus with emails and flyers and Instagram posts that my students know how to do, that I don't know how to do, with the link. Well, I don't know if the link will be in them all, and the QR code. It'll go live February 15th. The QR code and the link may be on the posters now. We have been meeting with representatives from the 28 schools, and New Mexico military is the only one not participating because they feed their students 4 meals a day, they told us. But all the other schools have given a verbal yes. We're still working out some IRBs with some of them. But this is just a huge opportunity to influence policymakers, administrators when we have this data. I think we're going to be national leaders when we get the data out. We have HED helping us with public information campaign. And I think we're going to get a lot of attention, and it's really going to be remarkable for faculty and staff. People have been collecting data around the country on college students, not very much in the Southwest at all or in New Mexico. But our preliminary data showed, our 2 years of data showed about 6,000 students at UNM might be food insecure. The USDA has 2 levels, low and very low. Low is you might get enough calories, but they're not nutritious calories, accompanied by a lot of worry. Very low is skipping meals and is a euphemism for hunger, as some researchers have said. The more of our students were very low than just low. So we think this is a huge problem. And most students tell us they suffer in silence. They don't know that other people are going through this. So I'm just here to appeal for your help and answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Sarita. First, we'll go to Carolyn, and then Barbara, I see your question in the chat.
Yeah, thank you for presenting on this, Sarita. I was wondering if you had a link that you could give us now to the survey so that we could, like, I take notes that I distribute to my faculty and I could put it in there.
Yes, I will try and do that right now.
Okay, thank you.
Barbara, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, thank you. I was just curious, Sarita, when you said 28 public, usually we say the 28, that excludes the tribal colleges. I'm just curious if you're including the tribal colleges and universities.
We are including the tribal colleges and universities. The secretary, Rodriguez, is really pushing this. She introduced it to all the college presidents. They have all said yes. We don't have IRBs from all 4 of them, but hopefully we will. We do have IRB permission from 2 or 3 out of the 4. I've got to check my email. But anyway, they want to participate.
Excellent.
Certain student populations have more. Our Native American population at UNM was 52% food insecurity. So,
any other questions for Sarita? Sarita, thank you so much to you and your colleagues for your leadership on this and for caring about our students and their success in this way. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Next on our agenda, Dr. Elizabeth Hutchinson will be talking about the Wayfinder, a resource navigator for UNM staff and faculty. Liz?
Thank you so much, Chris. Thanks to Chris and Vinny and all of Ops for hearing me and getting me on this agenda. I could spend my little time saying hello to my governance friends, but I'll move on to the subject at hand. I've put in the in my capacity as Associate VP for Equity and Inclusion, I've been working closely with IT Apps and a number of other campus programs to develop the staff and faculty Wayfinder, which is a website and a mobile app that staff and faculty can access. Is that showing there, Chris? My slides? You will
Yes.
find, because Senate meetings are long, I think you should have a toy to play with. I put it into the chat, so feel free to navigate that. And I promise not to read what's on my slides. These should be available to you as a supplemental item under the Senate agenda. So take a look at this at your own, in your own time. But I will just say a few things to offer some context here and give you a sense of where we are in the timing of developing this project. The Wayfinder website is live, that's why you can access it. And we are in a period of hard launch of the project, meaning pushing it out to a lot of different campus constituencies, staff council, the Senate. I've got a few presentations in Taos, and I'd love to reach the branch campuses as well and do more work at Health Sciences. And what I'm just showing people as by way of introduction to the project is the ways that it emerges out of work on sexual harassment prevention and other research on the importance of communication and removing barriers to individuals finding supportive services or making reports or doing both in the context of different types of harm, many of which may occur in combination. Here are just some of the key research foundations, some of the principal studies in conflict management, trauma-informed research and services, as well as sort of the considerations that drove this project that have to do with harm to especially vulnerable communities among the university employees. In building this, I promise you, I am not a UX designer, but some of my friends at IT Apps led the way here. And that is, we came with 4 design goals listed here. I probably should have privacy at the top of this list, since in our preliminary testing, staff and faculty concerns with privacy of their information were paramount. And that has guided all aspects of design of this site, ensuring that when people use it, they know that their data and their use is not tracked, that there is no opportunity to input any individual information. It's not a reporting site. It's just an information site and a suggestion of pathways. We went through usability studies, asking staff and faculty to navigate on the basis of case studies of imaginary staff and faculty colleagues who had been harassed or bullied or both to navigate without the Wayfinder and see what they could find at UNM that might be helpful for people. And this demonstrated a lot of the ways that our existing web pages aren't built to be easily findable. We have a lot of work to do with those pages as well. And the Wayfinder is a remedy for that. We then did a stage of development that involved considerations of accessibility and information and corrections offered by what I'm calling campus partners. That would include everyone from AF&T to CEEO and human resources, any of the sites on campus where people might arrive in their efforts to resolve or address harms that they've experienced or that they're helping someone else with. So all of the information that appears on the Wayfinder has been vetted by those offices, and it's a commitment of DEI to keep these pages up to date moving forward. We'll also be doing additional evaluation, taking feedback from all of you, from our colleagues at branch campuses, at Health Sciences, about the usability of the site. And we have certain revisions already in mind, including creating Spanish language access for the site. And these are all elements that we plan to continue testing going forward. This is, I think, the fun part. I'm just going to stop share for a moment, and that is in order to just, if you haven't pulled up the Wayfinder, to suggest that you can do that. Sorry, technical issue here. And then I'll take any questions if we have time. So I just want to point out a couple of things about this. This is how it appears in a browser. Is that showing for you? Are we good? Good.
Yes.
We've got exit quickly buttons that allow people to navigate at work, and if they want not to be observed, they can exit quickly to the UNM homepage. Also, a main feature I want people to know about is the Who Can I Call button that is on all of the pages. And this one provides easy access and contact information for confidential resources. In the earlier discussion about CO9, people were talking about power differentials, about really the tall hill to climb when one is a complainant. And like Chris, I've gone through that with folks and been through this process. And we want to make sure people know that community and campus resources that cannot be accessed by the administration are available. They have limited jurisdiction and power, all of which they can explain if you go to them. But I think it's important for people to know how to protect their privacy and their information until they're at a point where they're ready to make a decision about moving forward on a specific complaint. The main pathways here that will be of interest to you senators are along the lines of the succulent for the faculty. We begin with a what happened page, which is structured around the specific types of harm that may be recognized and acted upon by the university. And part of what we try to do is show in each of these sections how to understand the category of harm in ways compatible with the university's definition without reading the policy. I don't know how many of you tried to read our anti-discrimination and our respectful campus policies, but they are dense, right? And if something has happened to you or is happening to you, you may need a quicker way to understand what may or may be recognized by the university. In the best of cases, were you to report it or were you to seek specific forms of support? So in each of these boxes, if you flip them over, you get a definition page. And then this is the big too much text page. And with this, I will complete the brief tour. And that is in these two columns, one can get a quick listing of on the left side, information and support about this type of harm, as well as reporting options. And quite honestly, the reporting option column in many of these options pages remains the same because our main reporting mechanisms are ethics point, CEEO, and the administrative chain, whoever is the appropriate administrator to contact. And I think what's less known is this list of confidential and non-confidential supports that are available for faculty from CARS support, from Advance at UNM, DEI. Anyway, it's a different list depending on the different types of harm. And I encourage you to explore these pages and notice that each of these blocks, these content blocks, has a direct link to the office in question. So you can go directly to their webpage if you want more information. It advertises which offices are confidential per the university's rules. And then under what should I expect, what I'm intending to do here is make sure that people approach these offices and these processes with clear and reliable information about what those offices can offer them, right? And what they can resolve, what they can't, some of the aspects of the process that in the past have been most important for visitors to know about before they contact them. So each of these, what should I expect, has an accordion file. Some are really full, some are not so full. But all of these areas are ones that we're going to be testing and receiving feedback on through in a continuing kind of iterative fashion. I see that there are some questions. Oh, not questions, just people saying nice things. Thank you so much. I can take questions if there's time. I also will put my email in the chat and encourage you to send me your questions. That, and please bring the Wayfinder URL as well as the news story that Steve Carr wrote about it to your faculty so that they get some orientation to this resource.
Liz, I just want to point you to Joellen's comment. Joellen writes, I hope you will be looking at how it is being used to continue to improve as a resource. I don't know if you wanted to comment on that. What kind of assessment maybe you're doing, or?
Well, I think we'll be doing focus groups, some selective usability tests. One of the barriers to using usual metrics for testing usability of this site is that the very promise of privacy prohibits us from really following what users do when they go to the site. It also follows, I think, in an ethical research ethics fashion, that we would not be seeking out people who've been hurt to ask whether they like the website. And so we're going to have to work with campus partners and develop focus groups in a creative way, I think, to get at information about how people are using it, what might be continuing barriers to accessing or using the site, what are people's frustrations about what's there. And I can share as we go forward. I hope to come back to the Senate with a list of frustrations of what's not on the Wayfinder, right? Those ways in which we all know that support for staff and faculty experiencing, real harms need to be improved. And I think that's a shared project we can engage. So I don't know if that answers, Joellen, precisely your question, but I'm happy to answer others.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, let me just say, Liz, again, thank you so much for, well, sorry, Nair, go ahead.
Sorry, Chris, I did not mean to interrupt you.
No problem. Go ahead.
So I guess I have a question. I really like this page, and I am really encouraged, like the amount of work that this clearly putting a page like this takes is really incredible. And as I see it, and so I see two things. I find it really helpful and intuitive and sort of friendly to people, but also incredibly daunting. And I don't think that there's a solution to this, because I think the problem is that the harms, the kinds of harms that occur, and the language of the university and the way that the university deals with them is daunting, right? So I don't know if there's a way to solve. If I were to be in distress because something happened, it's already so much information.
Yeah.
And I worry that maybe I won't be able to process all that information because I am overwhelmed, right, by the harm that happened. So is there a way, like you mentioned that you have to just call someone, something that can say that can help you, maybe, like if you need help to navigate this, can there be help for that?
Well, I think, I share that. Thank you, Nair. I really appreciate that question. I share your concern. It's something we struggled with throughout the design and testing phase of the site. And your question arises from what we would consider central to trauma-informed design in websites, something that we could all be working on across the board. But I will say that we made a real effort to not use just the language of the university in describing harms, complaints, and processes. If that translation did not work, I'm hoping to hear more back from people, but that was an explicit effort. The other would be the Talk to Someone button is prominent and appears linked in all kinds of ways, precisely because one hope of mine is if this is too overwhelming for someone, that they will in fact seek out confidential advice, confidential guidance. And so when I was early on in this project asked, but how will you measure whether it's working? I said, well, that's going to be tough to measure because by certain criteria, if more people would consult early on with confidential and experienced practitioners, in some cases, ombuds, in other cases, it would be the Women's Resource Center. We're lacking those resources, but we have a few. If people bail on the Wayfinder and they never read all that text, they can get some of the same information from those confidential resources. And those confidential resources are learning from the Wayfinder itself and incorporating some of that guidance into their practice. Because let me give you an example. Women's Resource Center is very student-oriented, right? But they get faculty and staff there too as well. And their first response was, this will be so helpful for us because we can sit with people and navigate. So now I don't think there's an easy answer to that question. It's a huge challenge. All we can do at this point is try to reduce the cognitive load and the sort of fear of retaliation that is so pervasive precisely when people need this kind of help. And I'm certainly open to more suggestions about how to improve Wayfinder's ability to do this, or what more we should be doing that's perhaps beyond what a website or an app can accomplish.
Oh, this is great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Jason?
Hi, I hope you can hear me okay. Yeah, great. Well, I think this is a fantastic resource as a one-stop shop really for finding information, because looking at the university website has always been a challenge since I started about 10 years ago or so, even to find something up to date. There's so many things that are out of date that don't seem to make sense, and you know, multiple hits on things that are outdated are quite frankly useless. So this is great if it is kept up to date. And I was wondering if it could feature in the future as part of the annual training that we have to do for things like Title IX, etc. This sort of one-stop shop. The Title IX training, for example, gives you so many resources that you can go and look at in separate places. And so I find this to be a fantastic resource. You know, I haven't explored it yet or anything, but I think going forward, this will be great for you know, faculty, student, and you know, other relationships.
Yeah, if you go to that thank you, Jason. If you go to the website, the Wayfinder, you'll see that it's got those prominent staff and faculty plants, right? And underneath, oh, you're a student? Here, let's give you a couple of pathways. It doesn't do the Wayfinder for students because their pathways and resources are substantially different from those offered to employees for a lot of reasons. And also more built up in certain areas, I would say, than staff and faculty supports. So there was a decision early on to make this only focused on staff and faculty. And as to your question of where this could be pushed out, I'm eager to find ways to reach faculty that they won't delete in their inboxes, right? So in that spirit, I'm offering this kind of presentation wherever faculty may gather, right? I'd be happy to walk in, say, here's what it is, and to take people's feedback, because it's just enormously valuable for me, which is something I'm doing also with staff groups and some admin groups. Would I love it to be part of HR onboarding of staff and new faculty orientation? Absolutely. I think those are two areas where it would be terrific if this could be made available to people so that they know where it is when they need it. And I'm also going to work with campus partners to make sure people are easily finding the website when they go to look for help. I'll tell you, one of the striking things about all the preliminary research we did was we said, okay, group of people, something happened. It was obviously bad. Maybe it was discrimination. Maybe it was something else. Where do you go for help? More than half would go first to CEO or to HR. And those are two not confidential places to get help. Those are places to report and take action. And so what I'm hoping is that the Wayfinder helps us encourage and make visible a more supportive culture where people can navigate according to their sort of individual and professional needs in ways that feel safe.
Thank you, Liz. And if it's all right with you, I'll contact you offline then, because tomorrow I have our departmental faculty meeting, and then so possibly in the next one in March, you could come
Excellent.
along. Okay, thank you.
I am running around doing presentations, like it's like me and emails. You can't quite get rid of me. So I'd be happy to hear from you.
Great.
Thanks so much, Liz. I just want to echo other comments that, I appreciate how much time and labor you've put into designing this website. I think oftentimes resources on campus can feel like they're more in support of the institution than those who access them. So this, the work you've done on this really makes it feel you're much more aware of your audience and the user and those who might be accessing it. So thank you. I feel lucky to have you representing us in the Division of Equity and Inclusion. So thank you for that work.
Thanks. Who thought a historian would help design an app, right? Never should have happened, but there we go.
All right, I'm moving on to our next agenda item, which is public comment. Rick, do we have we received any requests?
No.
So I believe at this time I can open it up to public comment. And Rick, we normally limit those to 2 minutes.
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any request? Sorry, I'm running through the chat to make sure I'm not missing anything. We have very limited time, but I do want to open it up in case there was anyone who wanted to make a public comment.
Hey, Chris, John Burke here.
Hi, John.
Finney has just sent me something about a concert series, concert coming up for Black History Month since he's been sort of incapacitated. And I don't know if you've seen it yet, but it's concert's going to be at Pope Joy Hall. It's free and open to the public, and I'm reading the dates real quick. It's going to be, there's one on Friday, one on Saturday.
John, do you mind putting that information in the chat?
He sent it to me as a text message, so I may have to email it to you and go the other way.
Okay. And I know it's going to be an incredible group of jazz musicians and a singer. Finney, I see you're back on. Do you want to talk about that? No.
Oh, I'm so sorry, everyone. So we're really fortunate to have the Langston Hughes Project coming back to campus, and it's in Pope Joy Hall this coming Friday morning at 10 o'clock curtain. But there's also two fundraising concerts at the African American Performing Arts Center at APAC, at the African American Performing Arts Center on the State Fairgrounds. And those are to raise scholarship dollars for African American Student Services. So if you can't come to the 10 a.m. show on Friday at Pope Joy, then there's an encore performance at the fairgrounds at 4. And then the next night we have a real treat. We have Nicole Henry, who is coming from Miami, award-winning jazz singer. And she's going to do a concert for us at the fairgrounds at 7 o'clock on Saturday. There's no ticket to get in. You just, if you want to donate money for scholarships to our students, you can. But the most important thing is for everyone to come and enjoy this. I mean, we don't get world-class jazz in Albuquerque very often, and we never get world-class jazz for free. So please come out and support, and I appreciate it. Good job, Chris. You did a really good job. Thank you for pinch hitting for me. I appreciate that. Thank you.
My pleasure. And Finney, I'm just putting in the chat the information you provided. Links to Nicole Henry, links to Dr. Ron McCurdy and the Langston Hughes Project, and some details on those events that you just mentioned.
There's also a link for free tickets, and anyone, your friends, family, anyone can come to that show. Well, any of the shows. But if you'll share this link, if you'll give me just a second to pull up the link. Everyone has to have a ticket for anything in Popejoy from now on. So
While Finney's looking at that, colleagues, I want to, since we're out of time, I want to point you to Nair's comment in the chat where she includes a link. I know Nair has been working very hard to get these workshops on grant writing in humanities and social sciences for grad students, faculty, staff, postdocs. So please be sure to check out Nair's link there. And at this time, I don't know what to do when it's the Faculty Senate president who has something to say past 5 o'clock.
No, I'm just part of public comment.
So thank you all for being here. Please check out those links from your colleagues. I hope you have a great rest of your week. And Finney, please take care of yourself, get some rest, get better.
Thank you.
So I don't have to do it in March. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you all.